Hello, good morning. Bit of a hazy day today, not like yesterday when it was all foggy, and it actually turned out quite a nice day. But thank you for watching all my videos. It's very pleasing to see the little red light, little red dot next to messages, meaning there's a comment on the channel or the channels. Well, I'd like to make a special shout out to all those, you know, big shot Americans. Not the everyday ones, the ones that you don't hear about, but those ones that put comments like, "Oh well, I do this and I do that," after they've been to the gym to build their chest up and their muscle on their arm. Of course, we all know that that's called bravado. Americans, I think they invented that word, even though it's got an Italian sound to it. Sadly or not, when you have an empire, you have a doctrine, a propaganda to the people, to the masses. And with that comes a certain inbred idea that, like you often hear, we're the greatest power, we're the number one superpower in the world. Well, okay, just means that they think they are. They've never been tested. After all, how many wars have they actually won? They fought in a lot, but they haven't actually won very many. In fact, if I can only remember one that comes to mind. But I'm not here to bash Americans, as they like to think I am. I'm here to tell it as it is here in the Philippines. You know, relationships blossom, relationships break down, lifestyles change, lifestyles are no longer appreciated anymore. We all make changes in our lives. The thing is, of course, when it comes to talking about a Filipina and a relationship, of course, we can't use the same measuring rod that we might use back home because there's very little to compare it with. Well, something in terms of that we're all agreed is a normal reaction. Many of you have suggested there's this Latino aspect of them, and I think that's probably, to a degree, the more recent occurrence in their history, and that is obviously because they were occupied by the Spanish. Those that have had an Italian girlfriend or a Mexican girlfriend, South American country girlfriend, wife, would understand that it's not a criticism of the wife itself, because you can have beautiful women, beautiful hearts. You can also have all of those things, but with a mean streak in them, selfish streak in them, a jealous streak in them, a suspicious mind in them, a terrible money manager, or they could be all the reverse of that. But I tend to believe that when you live from day to day, your ability to look at the big picture in terms of savings is not the same as yours, mine, and your children's growing up, understanding about going to the local bank and getting a little piggy bank given to them at a younger age so they can start the method of putting away. For a Filipina, they often see us as the golden egg that laid, or the goose that laid the golden egg. And it's probably quite true. It's a certain uplifting of their financial position. And I'm talking in terms of the ones that haven't got that financial upbringing themselves, having been brought up by a wealthy family, maybe. Ones with servants and nannies and gardeners and people like that, because they are here. It's just that you probably would never ever meet them. The thing is that when you when you are about or thinking or considering the idea that because your relationship has created a sort of a road hump that you can't seem to get over, and there doesn't appear to be any future ahead of you. Some of you, and they are Americans, suggest that you just hit the road, Jack. And I don't necessarily agree that they're wrong, but I'm just saying the way they approach it is wrong. Who am I to say that? Of course, you'll say, because you're one of those that I'm talking about, maybe. But for most of us, even in the West, it's not always a big decision. Quite often that in the West, your marriage fails, your relationship is on the rocks. You're tempted, you go away and you find another person. You start seeing them behind your wife's back. You start in effect a double life. Well, that may be okay for you morally, but really you're jumping out of the frying pan into another pot of terrible problems ahead, because having a relationship on the rebound is not always the greatest result. Once the small time has passed, you start to look back and think, why the hell did I do this? And I think that's quite commonly found. But isn't it funny, when you're doing a video, it's quiet before that time, and then somebody obviously has upset the dogs nearby and they just decide to bark. But moving on, making that first step to move out of the home, making the first step to venture out into the, as they call it, the dating scene. I just see it as becoming single and maybe meeting somebody else. And even then, there's a hesitance in starting it all over again. All the emotions that you feel, all the emotions you're looking to feel, hoping that they'll be there in this new one that you believe is the one that might be the answer. Well, I can assure you that for most people, that's not an easy task. It's one of those things where it's like going back to school, almost. If you're one of these Jack the Lads who's always been flirting away, having a bit on the side all the time, it's no problem to you to pack your bags and head into the blue yonder. But for most of us who've been loyal, faithful, and doing your best to make other people's lives the happiest you can bring them, it's hard to move on from that. You always wonder, is this just a lull? Is this just a moment in their lives and it'll all come right? Well, most of you will say, well, that's a case of denial. It may well be, but it's also maybe a case of hoping. And when you're hoping still, and many of us carry that hope through to the next relationship. When I say that, it means that they almost never give up. They never accept that it's quite over, especially when there's children involved, because that brings the two of you back together again. How many of you went back and on visitation, called at the house, children came out, mother brought them to the door? Well, that's a difficult moment for you And probably for her too, because maybe her other man or woman is in behind the door and she feels uncomfortable too. But being good co-parents, you battle on and you put on a brave face. Well, it's harder to do that in the Philippines because most of you will more than likely move to another island to avoid the chance of bumping into her. And that's the whole point. You've got to You've got to think about these things. Are you ready to start again? Because quite often you can be somewhere where you're miles and miles away from that person. And they say, "Oh, I know your wife." And you think, "You know my wife? The one that you're standing with?" "No, the one that you were with before." You know, and I would imagine that would be very embarrassing. So I can understand why you hope that she has no relatives in the next island that you move to. Or, of course, you can pack your bags and go it alone, maybe for a year or so before you reacquaint yourself. But remember, social media has a habit of following you around when you least expect it. She might say it's over, but natural curiosity, she will often track what you're up to and maybe make things a little awkward or uncomfortable. That's a Filipino for you. They love their social media. They love the old gossip. They love the jealousy bit. And these things are very hard to shake. So my advice to anybody is that for what it's worth, really, really, really need to think about what you're doing. Make sure that what you plan to do is going to have the desired result for you. Start thinking about yourself. Stop telling her that you're getting 200,000 a month or whatever the figure is. Maybe it's only $2,000. Maybe it's only $1,000. Don't tell her how much she is, especially if she's working. If she's working and intends to keep working, let her use her money as she would have otherwise. Let her use the costs of living that she's lived before you came. Don't let her change her lifestyle at your expense. You can help change her lifestyle with the addition of some of your money. But the most important thing to remember is some, not all, because most of you will realize that living in the Philippines is actually quite affordable for most of us. Sure, if you want a weekend away in Makati, it's going to make a dent in your pension. But if you've been saving regularly, it's no harm having a splash now and again if everybody enjoys it. But if it's a struggle to do it, don't do it. Go to the poorest area. Go to the off the beat track areas where the cost of overnight accommodation isn't so drastic. You'll still have and she'll have just as much fun walking along the beach, enjoying an evening meal at a little cafe or a servery or even a night market. It's about time spent with you, not the money that you spend on her. So if you like this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And come on, we're getting well. We're almost to 2,000. So let's get up to that 2,000 mark and then we can slide up the scale, which will be fun. Fun with you along here. So keep the comments coming. Just remember, if they're negative and they're not very attractive, they will disappear. My algorithm is set for that. So you have a great day. Bye now.